Mr Chair.
Honourable Chester Morrow.
Thank you, Mr Chair. And it's encouraging to have this level of debate. I'm sorry I didn't get quickly enough off my butt to answer it while we were discussing the previous part. The two questions were about the consistency between the bill currently before the Law and Order Committee and this bill, and I can assure the member that there is no conflict between those two, and we won't be running back like we did under all governments, let's be honest here, and do little tart-ups later on down the track. So consistency is there. The next question that the member asked was about why victims didn't avail themselves of the opportunity to appear before parole hearings, and he touched on one, which was frequently the victim just wanted to put things behind them and didn't want to re-engage. And the other part of it, though, is that a lot of these things, a lot of the way that people reflect on the criminal justice system is from a position of ignorance. Now, it's not their fault. I don't mean any malice by saying it. It's just that people watch a lot of TV and they expect that what they see before them in the little square box is similar to the reality of dealing with our criminal justice system, and it just isn't the case. But to try and get around that, with the implementation of the code that we've been talking about over the course of this evening, all victims will be made aware and completely aware of what that will entail. For instance, the ability to be able to take part in a parole hearing without having to be confronted or sitting in the same room as the defendant, the fact that they can do that remotely, or that their evidence can be taken at a time that's much more convenient to them, and put before the members of the parole board, which I think is a very, very important thing. I must say that people that I know who have appeared in front of a parole hearing and made submissions have actually found an incredible gathering of strength from that process. And I can recall that one of my constituents came to me when an offender who had tried to murder her who was coming up for parole and wanted my assistance. Unfortunately, although I was a member of Parliament, I was also the investigating officer in charge of that, preparing that file for court. And so I was prevented from being able to go along and make submissions or make any representation. But together we spied a conflict. So then what we managed to do then was to be able to draft a complete submission towards the parole board, and one of the things that she asked for was the ability to be able to have a restorative justice conference with both offenders who had tried to kill her. And what she found from that process was an incredible strengthening of her resolve, her being able to be sure that she didn't need to maintain any fear of these people, and just to be able to have her say. And so I would encourage all victims who think they may, or to reflect on what they might gain from appearing before a parole board or any restorative justice process. The next question that the member asked was about resourcing, and all I can really say there is it's more good news, because in our last budget the government doubled the amount of money available for restorative justice conferences, made a priority of pre-sentence restorative justice conferencing, got contracts to make sure that every court in the country was covered by it. So any victim of a crime right around New Zealand would now have the ability to access restorative justice conferencing without any cost to themselves. And also what we're extending, where we haven't really done it so much in the past, is restorative justice available in prisons, so pre-release. And we have, although that has been available on request of the offender, and we're in a bit of a bind here because you can't drag the offender into a restorative justice conference and make him or usually him sit there. In fact, there has to be an agreement from both parties to be able to do that. So the offender may well request a restorative justice conference, but the victim doesn't want it, and so it doesn't take place. And vice versa, the victim may well want to have a restorative justice conference, but the offender doesn't want that to take place. There are some places within prisons where it has occurred through the provision of the Sycamore Tree project, which was made restorative justice available to people in prisons on a purely voluntary basis. and provided by Prison Fellowship, where if the victim of the offender, Mr Chair, if the victim of the offender wasn't prepared to take part in the Restorative Justice Conference, then a victim of a similar crime, a surrogate in effect, who was happy to appear before the conference and to explain to the offender the similarities of the crime, the way that he or she felt having been abused, etc., etc. There has been some good come from that, albeit it's not the actual victim, and obviously there are times when it can't be the actual victim. So yes, I can assure the Honourable Member the Honourable Phil Goff, that there is consistency between the two bills as he sought. I've explained why some victims don't want to appear before parole boards but encourage them to do so because it may well be in their benefit, and can assure him that there is sufficient resourcing for the extension of restorative justice conferencing, which is now available for the first time throughout New Zealand in every court.
Honourable Phil Goff.
I'd just like to put on record